Hello, welcome to another weekly video. Today I'm going to be talking about um, our consequences of our actions and, um, you know, how do we live with some of the things that we've had to go through, or some of the things that, I guess, some of the bad decisions we've made. Um, I always kind of struggle with understanding that kind of thing because um, a lot of the things that we deal with later in life really come from uh, things that were out of our control. Um, our parents, um, sometimes doing certain things to us, or I mean, it may be something as simple as when you were a baby um, in your mother's stomach, in the womb. Uh, Sometimes um, our parents did things that they didn't know were wrong during their pregnancy, and we can just end up suffering for that the rest of our lives. Sometimes there's things that happened generations before. You know, a lot of women struggle with breast cancer, and that tends to run in the family. Um, Cancer specifically does run in the family. Um, things like high blood pressure, things like that. They're going to run in your family, and you know there's not a whole lot you can do about it. um, there are some things you can do about it, but I think we as human beings, we just really don't want to deal with the consequences of our actions. I mean, you know for example, if high blood pressure runs in my family, I didn't, um, I wasn't thinking about that, I wasn't wanting that, I wasn't planning on having high blood pressure in my life. I mean, you don't plan on the negatives that we tend to have to go through in life. So, um, I think a lot of times we want to be able to not have to face those consequences. And um, I mean, I think a lot of people do expect God to just um, to intervene and not have us face those consequences, because we weren't necessarily even there when it was brought into the family tree, when it became a curse. And that, I'm saying high blood pressure specifically because that is one that you know I don't think anybody wants to deal with. Or like I said, you could say cancer, things like that. um, those are kind of more black and white. Physical, diseases and problems that come from excuse me, that come from our our previous generations and relatives. And it's very hard um, to accept that these are things we have to deal with when, um, for example, maybe we haven't done anything to specifically cause it. Unfortunately, there are things that we have done that cause it too. You know, I think I think a lot of times we do things not realizing what the consequence is, and then feel kind of, I guess, unhappy when when we have to deal with the consequence. And not everything's that way. There are things where you can take some risks in your life and not necessarily deal with the consequence. But I'll just use myself specifically. Um, I when I got pregnant, I started having problems with high blood pressure, and it was just something that was really causing me a lot of problems. And I remember doing things that weren't really helpful for high blood pressure. Before I got pregnant, I was kind of doing some behaviors that I wouldn't really say, um, you know, made the situation better. For example, I was eating a lot of salt and not exercising regularly. So, there are some people that can eat salt and not exercise, and they'll never have high blood pressure. So when I found out that I had it, I kind of felt a little bit um, like it was unfair because, a lot of people do these risky behaviors all the time, and they don't have to pay for it. But high blood pressure runs in my family, so um, I can't do things that other people would do and get away with the same things. Now, I didn't know that, until it came about. But I look back and I'm like, well, it's kind of obvious. Some of the behaviors I was doing would lead to this problem. Um, but when I tend to see stuff like this, it kind of all goes together. The reason the curse is in the family is because there are a lot of bad behaviors um, that we do as humans that kind of lead to the curse. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen. Um, I think that's why we all start to think that the consequences that we have to deal with are unfair. Um, I mean, just because, for example, um, the women on my mother's side had breast cancer, that doesn't mean that I can accept the fact that I may have it too. You know what I mean? We want to believe we have control of our destiny. We want to believe we can do things differently than our parents. And I mean, really, we can, but we can still make mistakes that kind of lead to the same place. I think that's why consequences can be hard too. It's like, well, you know, I thought I was doing better than my parents. How did I still get this problem? Um, and um, a lot of times, if you're aware of things that cause the problem, you won't get the problem. Like, well, this is kind of a deep topic, but some some things that I've noticed with cancer specifically is like um, it can come from like not facing some of our problems in our life. And that's really oversimplified. There's a lot more to cancer than that, but it can come from holding things in, a lot of bitterness, anger, unforgiveness. And because I know that, well, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but because I know that about cancer, I may not have to face it. I may not have to deal with that in my lifetime. Now, I may still have to deal with it. I haven't made the best choices in life. I've made some mistakes. I've held in a lot of things. I don't know if I'll have to deal with cancer or not. It doesn't really run in my family, but I guess my point was sometimes when you see the consequences, um, well, I mean, if you understand why something happened to somebody, like if you understand that somebody didn't forgive like their parent, for example, and that's why they got cancer, um, you're able to do something different than your parent, for example, or that person, and then you may not have to deal with that consequence. Excuse me, but that's not always true. I mean, for example, I just feel like if I had been more um, conscious and understood more about high blood pressure, that may not have been one of the things that I had to deal with. But like I said, there's no guarantees. I've just kind of given like a few examples may fall into that, um, but really, it's hard to just accept, what we've been passed down from generations. It's hard to accept, that we can't change our future. Um, once we accept the consequences, I think I think all we can think about is wanting the consequence to go away. I mean, um, now that I know that I have high blood pressure, I don't want to have it the rest of my life. But when I really think about it, I really may have done things for the past, I guess, 30 some years since I've been alive that led me to a place to have it the rest of my life. We're always trying to escape our consequence too. Which, I mean, who wants to deal with it? I mean, it is pretty bad. But I think a lot of it, like I said, is the ignorance of not knowing why it happened, or being so surprised that it makes you feel like, well, I don't want to deal with this because I didn't know the consequences were coming. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.